When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk. I'm your host Khalil Amunet, and today our guest is Dr. Mahmoud Ad-Dinawi. He is a lecturer at Al-Azhar University, the Faculty of Islamic Studies. And of course I'd like to welcome also our in-studio audience. Assalamu alaikum. How are you guys doing today? Alhamdulillah, that's good. Today our topic is going to be racism. Racism is the belief that race accounts for the differences in human character. Our ability for a particular race is superior to another. Christians believe that the first sin was committed by Adam eating the forbidden fruit. Muslims believe that the first sin was racism, committed by Iblis, when he did not bow down to Adam because he believed he was superior to him, because he was created from fire, not clay like Adam. I would like to give the floor now to Dr. Mahmoud Ad-Dinawi. He'll give a brief introduction to the topic.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. Anyway, racism is, we could say, it's one of the diseases that can inflict human society. It's something which is not good, it's bad at all. And Islamically, in Islam it's forbidden, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said in chapter of Al-Isra, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, we have honored all sons of Adam, regardless of their color, regardless of their religion, regardless of their ethnicity or background. All of them, they have the same rights before the law, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before humanity. And we have hadith in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, may Allah have mercy upon him. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in the farewell sermon that no Arab is superior to an non-Arab, and no white is superior to a black. So this means that all of them are equal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, He put the criterion, or the way by which people could be preferred, is the criterion of piety. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ, the most honorable of you in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is most righteous, or the one who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most. So Islamically, racism is prohibited, because nobody has been given privileges over another, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made all people equal.
Well, I mean, of course that is true in Islam, but do we as Muslims really follow that example that, for example, Arabs are, of course, not superior, but is that really enacted in this world?
Nowadays?
Yeah.
Maybe some people still have this belief, or have this notion in a way, because this is the human soul, or the human spirit. But Islamically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this shouldn't take place, because all of you, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said also in the hadith of Hajjat al-Wada', all of you have been created from Adam, and all of you worship the same Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some people, maybe because of some belief, they think that they are superior, or they are better than others, but no, I mean, all people are equal.
I mean, how can we turn back to Islam, and how can we turn back to this this idea that no race is superior to other? Because it's a huge problem nowadays. I mean, most of the problems in the world today are from racism.
Yeah. If we can, if we can go back to our religion, or try to adhere to Islam, try to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who by Islam or by the Prophet ﷺ eradicated all types or all forms of racism, we can get rid of this belief, or we can get rid of this idea anyway. But we remember that Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, Islam, for example, doesn't recognize racism at all.
Yeah.
On the contrary, Islam brought some people who came from different countries, like Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah. He came from Ethiopia. Sayyidina Umar, it is reported that he said about him when he was emancipated by Bilal, by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he said, our master, means Abu Bakr, emancipated our master. He's referring to Bilal here. So Islam raised the status of those people, because, I mean, just to eliminate or to put an end to the issue of racism. So people are recommended to adhere or to try to stick to the religion, try to stick to Islam, and by sticking to Islam they are going to get rid of this idea which is baseless. Nobody is better or superior to anyone, because all of us, we have been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we follow the same religion, and we are coming from the same father, Adam, and the same mother, Eve.
And I mean, our genetics are, sure there's an outward look about race, people do look different, but actually, human beings are pretty much the same, really.
Yeah.
I mean, what you learn from your culture, that's different, but humans are basically the same. I mean, they all have the same abilities, the same opportunities to learn, to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
Are there any other examples from the story of the prophets where he discouraged racism?
Yeah. The example that I have just mentioned now, and another example is Sayyidina Zayd ibn Haritha. He was a slave, and he was very close to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ loved him very much, and to put an end to racism, the Prophet ﷺ gave him the leadership of a big army. Although in this army we had Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, and we have great leaders like Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Abu Bakr. But he gave the bar, or he gave the leadership to Zayd ibn Thabit, who was a slave, and he was emancipated later on. And again, his son Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, also who was very close to the Prophet. He was the most beloved to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We remember this another example also, which shows how racism was fought by Islam. During the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a very noble woman. She belongs to a very wealthy family. She stole something, and then the Islamic punishment should be carried out here. Her hand must be cut off. But people said, how can we cut off the hand of this very noble lady? We need someone to go to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They talked to Usama ibn Zayd to intervene to make the punishment a little bit less. And when the Prophet ﷺ was told about this, he got very angry. Here is the equality itself. There is no discrimination. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, I swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, has stolen something, I will cut her hand off.
So, I mean, we are talking about he chose a former slave to lead the army because of his abilities, not because of where he came from.
Yeah.
So, can we talk more about how Islam discourages racism by the ibadats, like, for example, Hajj is kind of like United Nations, people from all races doing the same rituals.
I think that the first manifestation that we can see in Islam, the first thing before Hajj, we talk about prayer, right? Let's say that, for example, you as Khalil, you are the president of this country, for example. You came late, and somebody who's very poor, he came early. He will be in the first line of the mosque, and because you came late, nobody will make space or will give you the chance to enter. No, you came late. This means that you have to stand at the back of the mosque, right? In the mosque, also in the congregational or jama'ah, right? So you might prostrate, and in front of you, a very, very poor person, your face might touch his feet, right? So there is no racism here. All people are equal.
You're standing shoulder to shoulder, feet to feet.
That's right. You repeat the same words, you do the same rak'at, you do the same sujood, right? Once you go to the mosque, you get rid of your attire, or you get rid of your, for example, thinking, or your clothes, or your position, your financial status. Or
that somebody from a different race or from a different, economic status is next to you.
That's
and you're praying right next to you.
And the biggest thing, as you said, during the Hajj, All people, subhanAllah, in prayer, you might be different because you are wearing something which is different to the one who is next to you. But in the Hajj, subhanAllah, the very clear example that all people, they wear the same thing, right?
Yeah.
This person might be white, this person might be black, this one might speak English, this one speaks German, this speaks French. All of them, they have forgotten their languages, they have forgotten their backgrounds, they left their countries, and there is no atom of racism here. Right?
Or prejudice.
Or prejudice, yeah. Because the black is next to the white, and all of us, we are going around the Kaaba, we are doing talbiyah, we are doing ihram, right? So I don't think that any other religion has got this kind of gathering or this kind of unity that all people forgot their language, their colors, and racism has no place in Hajj, has no place in ibadat at all, right? You might be...
And a lot of people have gone to Hajj, like the example of Malcolm X, who was formerly sort of, he believed that the black race was superior to the white race at the time. He went to Hajj and that changed his ideas completely.
Yeah.
And he started following the Sunnah. And but I think we have to take a break right now. We'll be right back after this short break.
Be proactive.
How to be proactive in Islam, how to serve our religion, how to serve our life.
No, we want them to be proactive in matters that are related to their ummah, the true leader. And this is maybe we need to have this, among us as Muslims. The true leader is the one who creates leaders.
So the society at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave the chance for the children to blossom.
Now who took the reward of this? The initiative of Ali bin Abi Talib. Ali bin Abi Talib took the reward because of his initiative.
How long have you been passive? How much time have you lost in your life because of negativity? Learn how to take conscious control over your life. Set your goals and work to achieve them in an Islamic way.
If you really love your wife, your children, your parents, your people, then you have to do your utmost. You have to do whatever you can in order to invite them to Islam. We are in need for this reminder. The main point is ikhlas, is sincerity, is what I want to get in the hereafter.
Join Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad and his host, Muhammad Abdurrahim, in this inspiring show.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We were just talking about racism and sort of like Islam's cures for racism. But now we want to talk more about like the examples in other religions, how they segregate in their worship, in their churches. There are sometimes, in America, for example, there are African American churches, there are Latin American churches. What does Islam think about that? What is your opinion on that matter?
Yeah. I mean, from the Islamic point of view, we have, all of us as Muslims, we have our main home or our main headquarters, which is the mosque.
Yeah.
So the mosque is for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you are rich or poor, whether you are ruled or you are a ruler or, for example, president or whatever your position is. All people in the mosque, they stand in the same line, right? They follow their imam and they do the same practices or acts of worship. Unfortunately, I think I have seen something which is not okay when I was in the UK. Some people, they have some specific mosques. For example, this is the mosque for people from Afghanistan, this is from Bangladesh, this is from Egypt, and this is not the same, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He said, "In هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة." Your nation is one nation, right? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us, or he ordered us to be united. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned us against division. He said, وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. Don't dispute or don't disagree with each other, otherwise, or lest your power will leave you or you will be powerless. Okay? So the idea of worship itself, and it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was able to say that you pray to your home, right? But He said, no, we have to have the community. We have to pray in congregational prayer, right? Always to be like one nation.
So I mean, how can we deal with the problem of mosques separating one race going? Because like I think if you're Afghanistani, perhaps you're just gonna automatically, you have Afghan family, friends, so you decide to build a mosque like in a Western country. So you automatically, you get together, you build a mosque.
Yeah.
Then more Afghanis start going to that mosque. So, but how can we? Should they just say, let's invite other people to the mosque, or how can we stop that?
Yeah, I think if we can just try to understand the meaning of the word ummah, or the real meaning of the word community, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the one who doesn't care about Muslims is not among them. So I'm here, for example, in Egypt. I care for my brothers in Palestine. I care for my brothers in Libya, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in UK, in America, and everywhere. And so if people could understand really this meaning, by ways I think we can invite each other, people from different countries, they can have like one community or one society, and by this way they are going to get rid of the meaning of being fanatic to your own country or to your own language. And this is some people, unfortunately, they are a little bit, extremist in this area or in this field. And when you talk about, subhanAllah, our main concern should first be Islam, right? Some people, if you say, oh, you are from, for example, Belgium or Russia, he feels that you have offended him. But no, my main care, my main interest should be my religion first. I just want to build as a complete Muslim community, which includes all people from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's natural that people feel more familiar with
That's right.
their own race. But I mean, how do we look past that? Because it's something that's so natural.
Yeah. The problem is maybe the barrier of the language itself. Because, for example, people who speak the same language, they always try to stick to each other. Because it's better, for example, I don't speak Japanese. If some Muslims from Japan, they will try to do their best to be like a little community. So, but the only thing I think that can gather all those people is prayer. Because prayer, all people, they pray regardless of their religion, the language they speak.
In one language.
And we speak the same language when we pray. We read the Quran in Arabic. And another occasion also, as we mentioned in the previous segment, is the Hajj itself that can unite all those people. But we need to focus on this. We need to urge people, try to be united. Because if we are divided, then we will be like a fair game.
Okay, I think we're going to go to our audience, see if we have any questions.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to ask, if someone was to face racism from another, how would he go about dealing with that Islamically?
Very good question.
Yeah, could you make clear, what do you mean by this?
Like if a situation where he encountered racism, if he was discriminated against, for example, how do you deal with it Islamically?
Yeah. Islamically, first of all, you need to teach the person who is, for example, in front of you, or the person who is involved in this, that Islam is fighting racism by all its forms, right? So the problem that we might sometimes face is the lack of giving an example. Always, we need, by dealing with non-Muslims, for example, by dealing with people who are different to our own language or to our own ethnicity, right? We have to show the example of tolerance, and we have to show them a very good example, as the Prophet ﷺ, he was. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, indeed you have the best example in the Prophet ﷺ. And you have to do your best to be calm as much as you can, right? Try to avoid anger, as the Prophet ﷺ, when a person asked him, O Messenger of Allah, advise me by something which is good, he said, don't get angry, okay? Unless you have been offended or he's going to hurt you, then you have to follow the legal ways, right? By always, you should never insult anybody, even if he is not following your religion, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid us to do so.
Is there any other questions from the audience? Okay, I wanted to ask, where is the origin of racism? Where did it come from, in your idea? Is it something that's existed throughout the the whole history of the earth, or, I mean, it seems that racism is more pronounced in certain times.
Yeah.
But
maybe I think we have been discussing this before the program, that maybe it starts from the creation of the universe. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, and then Iblis said, why should I prostrate for him? I am better than him, because I have been created out of fire and he has been created out of dust or clay, or as the Quran said, the different stages of Adam's creation. Some people said also that when Adam got two sons, one of them he felt jealous because his brother is going to marry the one who is more beautiful than the one he is going to marry too, right? So he killed his brother, and from this time racism, right, some people say that started from this area. Even when the Prophet ﷺ, before his coming, this was very prevalent among Arabs, right? They used to think that, especially Quraysh and in particular the Arabs themselves, they used to think that they are superior to all other people in the whole world. Maybe because of their wealth, maybe because of their position, you know. So
during the Jahiliyyah, that was a big thing, was the Arab race. And the Prophet Muhammad brought it, you know, when making da'wah, he taught that race doesn't matter.
I think one of the Sahaba, I think it was Sayyidina Abu Dhar, one day he talked to Sayyidina Bilal and he said to him that you are the son of the black woman. And then the Prophet got very angry and he said to Abu Dhar, you still have part of ignorance, right? You have to go to Bilal, you have to apologize for him. And Sayyidina Abu Dhar, he did his best to ask Bilal to forgive him, right? So we should never involve anything like this, because the person who is black in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might be better than the one who is white.
Just based on his deeds.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any situations you want to share? Any situations where race became an issue, or maybe you were discriminated against based on race?
Assalamu alaikum. Not so much discriminated against, but the community from where I come from, Perth, Western Australia, we suffer the issues that you were mentioning before about segregated communities setting up their own masajids and whatnot, particularly for themselves. Now, this is also happening pretty much all over the West, I think, where the Muslim minority just set up certain masjids, and whoever's on the committee, whether they're South African or from Egypt or from Sudan or whatever, they set up mosques particularly for them. How can we tackle this issue head-on, Islamically?
This as I said, this is something I have really noticed this in some Western communities, that people, they always love to be in a specific place, like as you said, from Egypt, from the Sudan or whatever. But we again, I have to repeat this, the main issue that we care about is that we have to be like one complete community. We have to forget because in the past we didn't hear about these countries. In the past we have something called the Islamic Caliphate or the Islamic State, which was, for example, the headquarters was in Medina, and then we have just some small areas, okay? So it's better to try to involve, try to invite each other, try to make those people closer to each other so they can involve, they can, for example, pray in the same mosque. We need to little bit forget about our backgrounds, right? Because it's very bad. I remember a report in which that happened during the time of Prophet Moses alayhi salam. A person, he stood up and he started to mention the achievements of his grandfathers and so on. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the person was doing it as he's boasting, or he's feeling very, very proud of his ancestors. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Musa alayhi salam, he said to him, go to this person and tell him that he mentioned 9 of his forefathers or of his ancestors. All of them, they are in hellfire, and he is going to follow them, right? So it's something which is very grave when you just care about your background and you leave your religion. So it's better, I mean, for those people to have the meaning of the word community, or the meaning of the word ummah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran.
Actually, just as an example, in America, sometimes there are some mosques, they choose the imam based on his race. One of the criteria is, we have to have an Arab imam, you know, or we are a Pakistani masjid, we have to have a Pakistani masjid. a Pakistani imam, to lead Taraweeh or whatever, just because they are used to that. But it's still racist.
Yeah, I remember, I think I was in Newcastle and I went to a mosque and the speech or the sermon was done in a language called Pashtun, something like this. So I understood nothing at all. Right. So and the majority I think the only one who speaks Arabic in this area. Right. So this is not the real thing. Right. We have the Islamic civilization is one, and the Islamic culture, or we have the same religion. We need to communicate, or because if you have your own mosque now, and I have my own mosque, if something wrong, for example, or your country has been, for example, invaded, I will have no idea. Right. So it's the whole community, as I said, we need to have a real Muslim nation.
And so what is your advice about, a masjid? Oh, we're predominantly Arab, maybe not because we choose to be, but then an Indian imam, for example, he's applying for a job, And so what is your advice,
if he's qualified, there should be no problem. But those people, from whether they are Indians or Egyptians or whatever, they shouldn't make the mosque entirely for those who speak Arabic or those who speak, for example, French or English. No, it's the mosque is the place for worship for everybody who speaks Arabic, who speaks even Japanese or Chinese or whatever. Okay, so we need, just to have different cultures, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Rum, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. Among the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you have different languages. And he said also in Surah Al-Hujurat, the main, subhanAllah, maybe this is the significance behind having different languages. Allah
or different races.
Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ. We have made you as nations and tribes in order to know each other, right? To populate, to spread Islam in all different parts of the globe.
Yes. Okay, I think that's all the time we have for this segment. We're going to go for a short break, and we'll be right back.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose whom He wills subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy, for His messengership, for the revelation to be revealed. This is not for the human beings to make that decision. If a person would turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, truthfully, asking for forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to forgive. We have as Muslims a duty, and that is to recite the book of Allah, to ponder over the verses, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to act according to the Quran. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything, but who would this mercy will be for? And the Prophet ﷺ was sent to all mankind. So the ummah, or the people of the Prophet ﷺ, are all mankind since the time of the Prophet ﷺ till the day of judgment. Why waste our life without getting to know every verse in the Quran, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us?
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Joining us in the studio is a new guest, Eric Wilberg. He is a journalist and a writer for Al-Ahram Weekly. Welcome.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, what have you thought about what was said in the previous segment?
Well, I found the analogy of Iblis and Adam as the source of racism. I think that is an important point to emphasize, that this superiority complex, psychological, in human terms, we can talk about the psychology of people feeling superior to other people for whatever reason. This is perhaps something that does go back to the origins of consciousness, when people, this gift of Allah, of being able to reason and conscious, everything has its negative side. We know that throughout creation things have both positive. We can understand and love and reason, but we also can reason negatively. So I think that is a good way to interpret the origins of racism. And from a psychological point of view, we have within us bad or evil, and when we see the other, a person that is not like us, we feel threatened by always. We never know what other people think. Are they harming us? Are they like us or not like us? We tend to project our negative side of ourselves, things that we repress. We project that onto those people, that person, and then try and feel superior. So that is the kind of psychological element of racism, that it's this idea of projection.
We are used to, as humans, anything that's familiar to us is more important to us. Anything that we know, that we've seen, from childhood to adulthood, is something that's in our minds. We're used to seeing a certain color or a certain, just the way things are. We get used easily to things.
Yes, whatever's familiar to us is we feel we understand better. If it's something that's very unusual, different, then it's somehow threatening, and we can fantasize, and not knowing what the reality is, we tend to fantasize the negative onto the other.
How can we combat this thought process? How can we get used to different things?
Well, there's our reasoning ability again. This is the gift that we have as humans, and we really have to promote through our education system, through our families, for people to understand and to try to think for themselves, even if thinking in the context of Egypt's revolution today. The previous system was to try and repress people from thinking for themselves, just to follow what they are told from above, very much condescendingly. Now people are trying to rid themselves of this top-down mentality and to try and make use of their reasoning. So, and I think one of the wonderful things about the revolution, one of the Egyptian prominent people said when he came to the square and saw Christians pouring water for wudu for the Muslims, he knew that the revolution would succeed. So that this breaking down of the barriers of the other, the fear of the other, and uniting us. So I think that this is the way to proceed. It's a social phenomenon. We can't overcome racism just by going and sitting on a psychiatrist's couch. It's got to be a social.
We have to get to know one another, try and interact with each other.
Our society itself has to work towards promoting understanding and thinking and curiosity to understand the other.
So we need to purposely put ourselves out there, like we were talking about mosques segregating. Now it's something that came about naturally because of maybe human psychology, but it's something we have to fight in ourselves. We have to try. And
I don't see the mosque business as particularly threatening. It's when you're talking about racism, I think I would call a lot of that more ethnicity, because Pashtun, of course, people are immigrants. They only speak Pashtun. They're going to naturally gravitate towards a mosque and create a mosque where they can understand the sermon. It's difficult for me here. When I go to pray in the mosque and I hear in Arabic, my Arabic's not good enough. It's boring just to sit and not really understand. So that is a problem. You have to learn languages and try. It takes a lot of effort to get out of that. I mean, if you understood enough Pashtun and went to that mosque, they would probably be delighted that someone that's not from their community has taken that great effort to understand them and want to be part of their community. I think especially the Islamic community is not racist. That's a very liberating thing about Islam that I've experienced. Christianity shouldn't be racist, but unfortunately there was a lot of racism in Christianity. In Judaism also is a rather racist community. Even they feel superior and have a closed more community traditionally. So this has been a problem with Jewish, non-Jewish interactions. There's
I hear
always
like
been
that
that
even
element
like
of
there are
racism.
Ethiopian Jewish people who are sort of discriminated against because they're black, and they're Jewish people. They believe in the Jewish faith, but they're still discriminated against.
Well, yes. In fact, Israel itself was founded not by Semites, not by people from the Arab world. It was founded by Western or Eastern European Jews who are descended from tribes in the Caucasus and in Eastern Europe, and have very little, if not any, Semitic blood. So when they came and founded Israel as colonial settlers, they reproduced the colonial mentality of the Christian world, which had conquered territories and which was responsible for a great deal of racism. Now you've got a Jewish colony recapitulating that whole imperial process. So the racism is very strong in Israel against non-white Jews and against, of course, against the native Semites in Israel.
So basically, I mean, you're saying that that the problems in the Islamic world are maybe based mostly on language, ethnicity, not necessarily race, where they're looking at, oh, we don't want a white person coming to this Afghani mosque. It just has to do with the way things naturally happen, you know, people, the same language, and...
Well, I think there's a certain amount of prejudice probably, and even I know Egypt is more white, but of course there's a great deal of, there's a lot of mixed and black Egyptians. But there is a certain, I think the trouble with this white, racism has traditionally been white, black, or white, non-white. And why is that? I don't know how far this goes back, but there's a minority of people in the world that are white. Maybe,
yes.
And maybe that's a genetic thing that
They're very small
developed in the northern hemisphere. And white somehow became a symbol of maybe ghost-like or spiritual. It has no basis in
actually, it just has to do with pigment in
pigment.
your skin.
And
That's
in
it.
fact, white people, I know I have skin problems that I envy people that have nice brown skin that don't burn so much. And I mean, white skin is not any particular advantage, but it has somehow in history become a symbol of superiority.
Maybe, yes.
And it's not based on any real fact. It's based on some kind of myth. And the trouble, traditionally, 2,000 years ago, that was not a problem. But with the rise of capitalism and the imperialism, when the white northern Europeans started to colonize and control non-white territories, they used this myth to enforce their own sense of superiority among the natives. So it became a weapon. This white skin became a weapon in an economic and political war. So that's when
and
it
they
really
use it
became
psychologically, really, because
And
it's
use it
something
psychologically.
they hadn't seen something white.
So it was a novelty, and simple tribes are welcoming. Oh, you're come and you're a guest, and so they accepted them, and the white people came and just started killing them and stealing their goods and making them sick and taking their territory. So it was I come from a part of the world that has a great deal of sin on its shoulders from generations back, and I think for me it was a liberating thing to come to Islam, to be able to shed that and to realize very much we all are one, and that Islam is a way of really getting rid of racism in any fundamental way.
Yes. Dr. Dina, what do you think about what he was talking about, the ethnicity versus racism? What's the difference between that? I mean...
Islam, of course, is fighting these things. It doesn't recognize, for example, or it doesn't give superiority for anybody because of his color. I remember that we have the Sahabi, the companion Salman al-Farisi, who came from Persia, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he gave him the title of, or the privilege of being among the family member of the Prophet. He said, Salman minna al-bayt. Salman is one of the member of the Prophet's household anyway, or one of the al-bayt anyway. Okay, so this is not the same case as in some other, as you said, as Eric, for example, talked about Israel. I have never seen a black minister in the Israeli cabinet, or even a black prime minister of Israel, for example. They always take the Jews from, I think, from Europe to hold these positions, but those from Ethiopia who are called, I think, the Jews of Flasha or whatever, they always inferior to the white who are superior in a way. But in Islam, no. In Islam, we have some rulers, I think, in our history who were black, right? And so we don't recognize sometimes, as I mentioned the hadith, I think, a black person. I remember one of the companions, about him, the Prophet ﷺ, he gave loads of favors and honored him because he was black, and the Prophet considered him as one of the most important parts of the Muslim community.
Yes. So have things gotten any better since numerous civil rights movements, laws being enacted in Western countries in America, South Africa? Are people getting less racist, or have things just stayed the same but the laws have changed?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. The civil rights campaigns have improved this situation. If we're thinking in Western European or American terms, it addresses individuals and tries to make the individual think before he says something or does something. Laws that prevent you from discriminating in housing or in education or at workplace. So the civil rights campaigns did address the psychological aspect and at least make people repress that desire to express their superiority in real terms. And also by legislating this achieving legislation against discrimination, it did provide some legal status for non-whites, let's say, if we're putting it in that terms, to assert their rights. But as long as there are I see racism as very much an economic problem. The main problem of racism really arose in the last centuries, 4 or 5 centuries, with the consolidation of capitalism as a world system which objectifies people. When you turn people into wage slaves, then you create this superiority complex. You enforce it in your economic system. And when you extend this system to the whole world through an imperial order, which is predominantly the white-controlled, controlling non-white populations, that is going to endure. That racism will not go away until that whole system of inequality in the world is readjusted, until the U.S. basically no longer is the source of the
wealth of the other nations.
Yes, and absorbing their wealth and making use of it and legislating. Even though there is a black population in the United States, it really is very much a white-controlled society, legislating to a non-white world.
They basically just work for the white people, and don't even make as much money.
And they replicate the whole inequality around the world. You have an underclass in the States that works for low wages and supports, even ideologically supports their masters who are in business in the controlling world resources. So until this economic system is changed, the racism will endure. And now we've been through a particularly severe, the last few years, economic system in the world is getting worse. So to that extent, racism increases. We were discussing before the show how in Europe now the rise of racism is very severe, even worse than in the States. There are movements calling for ethnic cleansing of Europe, getting rid of, and not just getting rid of blacks, but getting rid of people who are Muslims. In Europe, it has become a Muslim race. The two aspects are almost united in in that projection of what people don't like, the white people projecting the non-Christian and the non-white into and saying get rid of these people. So this has increased as the economy has gone down. You can chart as the economy goes this way, racism goes this way. So,
and they're even picking things like the niqab, like some Muslims wear the niqab who are mostly Arab immigrants, taking people's jobs. So they make a law to make people just uncomfortable. With their presence there. It's
they are contradicting themselves because they are always talk and they are proud of democracy, liberty, freedom. And once a Muslim woman is wearing niqab, for example, then they have loads of campaigns against her, and we have to ban her from going to the restaurants. Even they are not welcoming hijab, they are not welcoming niqab. So where is liberty? Where is freedom that you're talking about? We need to
and
see
it's a
these
sneaky
things.
way to be racist. It's kind of just picking, things that one race does, and outlawing it for no reason.
Yes, this sneaky way of being racist, there's many ways. The xenophobia, the hatred of the foreigner, that's an overt racism. But there's even a xenophilia. There are some people, I mean, this is a kind of not a benign form of racism, but whites in Europe, if it was just white, it would be a very boring society, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I would find it terribly boring.
Right.
And a lot of white middle-class types, they kind of secretly admire the other cultures for being more exotic, for their food, even for the supposed sexual prowess of Arabs and blacks. And this has created a kind of it's a racism in a way. There's a term Orientalism that Edward Said, the great Palestinian Christian,
but that's not
writer.
encouraging either. Saying one race is, it's mostly based on myth. Actually, these things where
but
it's not based on individualism at all. When you're saying, this race is better at this, and there's so many.
That's a good way. That's a good way to be racist. If you're going to be racist, be racist in the sense that you love the other cultures because they are somehow more interesting than your own. That's almost an inversion of racism that we could commend that has happened. But unfortunately, there's more of the xenophobia than the xenophilia.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for this segment. We'll be right back after this short break.
Questions that bother you? What about issues of concern to you? Would you like to share things on your mind with us? Are you interested in solutions based on an Islamic perspective? Please join me live in Meet Your Advisor every Friday at 9 p.m. Mecca time, here on Huda TV.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We're just having an interesting discussion about racism. We're going to go to the audience now to see if they have any questions. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, what is the masjid's role of sort of stopping racism in their own neighborhood, and what if there's a masjid is usually one, you see usually more one race? How can a masjid stop this in their neighborhood?
Okay. So, you mean the role of the mosque, for example, to fight racism or just to fight this thing? It's better to, I think in Egypt we have something called to renew the address, how to address people again, or to renew our talk or our speech. Because, everything is changing nowadays, for example. So we need to tackle new points of how to bring the communities closer or try to bring all people together to be like one community. I always like the word nation, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this word 2 times in هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة in 2 different verses. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also, he told us to be like one person when we fight. And again, that's why the congregational prayer has been legislated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to teach people how to compose or how to form a complete community. So I think preachers or sheikhs in the mosques should do their best to fill this gap in a way and to bring all people from different countries to the same mosque. If a mosque, for example, is only using one language and the attendants of the mosque themselves are for one country only, no, they should give the chance to all people to attend. And it's better for every Muslim nowadays, I think, to speak more than one language or to try to learn other languages in order to understand the culture of other countries.
To learn from each other and exchange ideas.
Yes, to exchange ideas, experience. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to Dr. Ndiaye for, do you have any last words on the subject?
Yeah, I think about this subject nowadays, especially we are watching different changes in the world, revolutions and different, for example, some regimes have fallen down and so on. So we need again to go back to our religion. We need to forget about our backgrounds. We need to forget about our colors. We need, even if we are Muslims, also we need to come closer to those who are non-Muslims, to the Christians, to the Jews, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored again all humanity, because the hadith says that the human being is the creation with the building of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who tries to destroy this building is cursed by Allah. Right? So we need again to rethink about this issue, to have one peaceful and one world which is free of racism.
Free of racism by going back to the way of the Prophet, not basing everything just on outward appearance, especially. So I think that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank Eric Wilberg. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
And Dr. Mahmoud Dinawi, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank our studio audience. Thank you guys for attending. And that's all the time we have. Let me remind you guys with our email address, talk@huda.tv. And we also have a Facebook page if you'd like to become a fan. And that's all the time we have. Thank you and goodbye.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.